Okay, Om Shanti. Om Shanti, everybody. Really good to see so many of my very dear friends. And I know it's a beautiful afternoon. Rather than enjoying the sunshine, you have all very generously given up your time to be inspired by some of our friends here. So thank you very much. So good evening, everybody, and very welcome to Inner Space Wembley. So many of you will know I'm Ketan Sheth. I'm a councillor here in Brent, where I also chair the Community and Wellbeing Scrutiny Committee. I'm also lead governor for CNWL, which is Central and Northwest London NHS Foundation Trust, the community and mental health service provider. The NHS is often said to be the nearest thing we have to a national religion in terms of its values that appeals to every belief and ethnic group in our society. A reflection, perhaps, of what we all believe being a citizen here confers, come what may. We saw something of this in the recent Jubilee. Despite the current cost of living crisis and many other difficulties, we all came together. It really was time of jubilation, eclipsing anything Wembley Stadium has ever seen. Whether you are a monarchist, royalist, or otherwise, you could not fail to be moved by the engagement, the reaching out to neighbors and communities to greet and celebrate something held in high regard and in common. It really was our collective showcasing of our hope, healing, and happiness. The observer said, the Queen is the thread that runs through our collective story. The woman who celebrated victory in Europe Day in uniform and gave the Beatles their MBEs. She met the men who walked on the moon. She opened the Channel Tunnel. She saw us join the EU and leave it. She rode through London in an open carriage with Nelson Mandela and shook hands with Martin McGuinness in Belfast. She met 13 US presidents and every Labour Prime Minister there has been. During her reign, almost every aspect of our lives have changed, but she seems unchanged. And too many has the constant source of hope, healing, and happiness. That common thread of our humanness is encapsulated in the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights, 30 of them, and nowhere are all of them as upheld as they should be. But they are a commitment and framework to work within. Not that all people must be same, actually being as diverse as we can, to be ourselves, but within a common framework of beliefs based on experience. And that is what we are exploring tonight, my friends, with our distinguished guests. But before we hear from our friends, we might perhaps reflect for a moment on the work of the late poet Philip Larkin, a famous depressive, but even he knew when happiness was coming. He never avoided the difficult issues and always sought for mutual understanding. His poem, Coming, stresses the need for us truly to hear ourselves as well as one another, and truly to see and to understand. He said, on longer evenings, light, chill, and yellow bathes the serene foreheads of houses. A thrush sings laurel surrounded in the deep, bare garden. Its fresh, pilled voice astonishing the brickwork. It will be spring soon. It will be spring soon. And I, whose childhood is forgotten boredom, feels like a child who comes on a scene of adult reconciling and can understand nothing but the usual laughter and starts to be happy. Friends, on behalf of Inner Space Wembley, thank you for coming. And I don't know about you, but I certainly am looking forward to be inspired this evening by all of you with plenty of hope, healing, and indeed happiness. So thank you very much once again to all of you for joining. I'm grateful to you. So friends, you should have on your chairs the program with a rough timing that we are going to try and stick to. And can I now introduce our young performers on my left, who are Tejal Panknania, who is a dentist and looking to start her practice very soon. And our friend Raquel Raidada, who is a software engineer, and both are beaming with smiles. And let me tell you about the secret of their smile. They've recently got engaged, so congratulations to you both. Thank you very much indeed. And our friend is Shivani Unadkat. She's a radiographer by profession, and equally very welcome to you. Looking forward to hearing your tablas. Thank you very much. So, friends, if you could just do your piece for us, and we are absolutely looking forward to hearing your piece. So if you can just give her a round of applause. my goodness, I know where I would be. From enjoying the sunshine outside or to listening to this beautiful music, I know the choice that I would be making. Thank you very much to our trio. Thank you very much indeed. So, we are very lucky, friends, to have Miss May Sim Lai, he is the Deputy Lieutenant for Greater London. She was appointed in 2006, and following year she was appointed as the Representative Deputy Lieutenant for the London Borough of Brent, and we are exceedingly lucky to have you this evening, May Sim. So grateful to you. So May Sim was born and educated in Malaysia. She came to London in 1970 to train as a chartered accountant. In 1979, she became the first Chinese and female partner of the leading firm of city chartered accountants, Pretty Brewster, which was established almost 100 years ago. What a wonderful achievement. Thank you very much. She's a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of England and Wales and a fellow of Association of Chartered Certified Accountants, where she's a member of the UK Small Business Committee. Additionally, friends, she holds a vast number of public appointments, and as I've said, grateful that she has been able to find some time to join us this evening. May, if you could just come forward and say a few words, please. Friends, if you could just welcome her.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Ketan and Sheth. So, sisters and members of the Brahma Kumaris, Mr. Worshipful Mayor of Brent, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. As Ketan has said, I've been the Queen's representative for London Borough of Brent since 2007. So I am her eyes and ears in the borough. So I am delighted to be visiting this inner space center for the first time. And I too look forward to hearing what the panelists have got to say. So I think all of us have been affected by the pandemic. And also we continue to be affected by things which are happening. And some of it is beyond our control. But it is important to have the right mindset, to build up the inner strength, to cope with the things which are not going smoothly. And I think the panel this evening will hopefully cover sort of quite a lot of the ground. A lot of surveys have been done, and I think Councillor Ketan has brought to my attention that young people, for instance, have suffered quite badly from the pandemic. And based on a study by Imperial College, it was very surprising to me that Chinese children have suffered the worst based on this survey. And therefore, there's quite a lot of work that needs to be done. The topic is very, very relevant. Looking at hope, looking at healing, not just physical healing, but mental healing, and also happiness. So I have attended quite a number of celebrations to honor the Queen and her remarkable 70 years of her reign. Last week, I had a big lunch for women in the city, 180 of us. There were some men too. So it's very good that you've organized this event in conjunction with others to mark the Queen and to honor Her Majesty. So I wish you all a very good evening, and thank you very much again for inviting me to this very special event. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for those words, Maysim. Always good to see you, always good to have you. Friends, Maysim has certainly been breaking glass ceilings, but my next friend, who I'm just going to introduce, has also been breaking the glass ceilings frequently, I hasten to add. So our next guest is His Worshipful, the Mayor of Brent, Councillor Abdi Aidan. I say breaking glass ceilings. He became the first mayor, first councillor of Somali heritage in 2010, representing Barn Hill to begin with, and then went on to represent Sudbury, and currently he represents Stonebridge. Breaking glass ceilings, again, not that many weeks ago, by becoming the first mayor of Somali heritage. We are incredibly proud to have you as our mayor, and indeed, he too is a passionate advocate of community voices right across Brent, but not just passionate voice. He strongly believes in helping and supporting those causes which Maysim was highlighting, the health inequalities which we have all been experiencing with the recent pandemic. So, Mr. Mayor, I know you have a very, very busy diary and you have to go off to another event, but if you could please come and say a few words, please. Thank you.
Sisters and brothers, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. First of all, it's my first time I come here in Wembley. Yeah, sorry, I don't know. And also, I didn't know about the existing Brahma Kumaris organization. Until yesterday, our sister gave us more information about this organization. And she explained us the service they provide the community, which when I heard, it was very great to hear that. What also I love it that is all these services are free for community. I'm very glad to that. And I wish I know, long time ago, I will come and I will take the service. And I'm sorry I have to go sooner in 5 minutes, but I would like to thank you, all of you, coming here and taking part this very, very special event. I can see all the faces are happy and nice. And I wish I will be able to stay here for a while to take part in that happiness. And I would like to thank you, my colleague, my teacher, who trained me when I came as a counselor 2010. He trained me and he gave me a lot of knowledge about how the council operates. And he was my chair of the community. I was a member of that. And he always gathers information and feeds us to be able to decide what's good for the community. Thank you very much for inviting me here. I wish I will be here more. When my when I finish here, I'll be in Maya. After that, I will still continue coming here. I want to be happy as I can see all the faces sitting here are happy and shining. Thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
My goodness, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, for those lovely words. Grateful to you. And I know how busy you are, so equally grateful to you for finding some time to join us this evening. Thank you very much indeed. So, friends, we are not just going to be listening to our panel. I'm also keen, as I've said in my opening remarks, that I want to be inspired by all of you. So I'm going to get you all to take part in telling us what is it that is inspiring you, what is it that is inspiring you with some hope, some happiness. And I'm now going to ask Sister Kanak to lead this session for us, and hopefully you will feel confident enough to share your thoughts with us so that we know exactly how we need to work together to bring that commitment to inspire everybody. Thank you very much. Sister Kanak, if you want to come forward, please.
Om Shanti, and thank you very much. It's an honor and privilege to be here with you this evening, and my role is to get you to interact. So I hope I do a good job. To begin with, we always say here is connect with yourself first, then connect with the divine, and then serve. 3 steps. And so that's what I'd like you to do just within a few minutes. Would you like to join? Yes? Thank you. So if you could kindly just stand up and turn towards the chair that you've been sitting on. And here, for a few minutes, I'd like you to just do a reflection over a few questions. Looking at the chair that you're facing, just visualize yourself, your body, seated on the chair. And I'd like you to look at your eyes. Can you see your eyes? And for those who are also online, you may do the same. What does your body language look like? How do you feel looking at yourself? Second question. Looking at yourself in the present, here, now, at this time, what do you feel? That you would need to do to create a positive change for your future. How do you see your future? And the final question, if you were to make a plan for your next 6 months, how would you see this change unfold? What elements would you need to put in place? Breathing in and breathing out. Visualize yourself giving a very big spiritual hug to yourself. And now you may turn around and sit back on your chairs.
Thank you very much indeed, sister. Grateful to you. And can I also welcome all of our friends, not just here in the room, but we've got great many friends who are joining online on various social media platforms. We've got friends on Facebook, we've got friends on YouTube, and other media platforms. So you are equally all welcome. And I just wonder whether anybody wants to share anything. It'd be really good to have your thoughts, please. One or two contributions? One or two contributions, friend? Following from a little interaction with Sister Kanan. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Imam Saab, do you want to say how that interaction felt? How do you view the hope, please?
It's wonderful to be here. It's my first visit to Wembley.
Thank you very much. Shaben?
I think it's difficult to visualize initially yourself, the body image, and especially what's in your eyes.
Thank you.
It takes you back. Sorry. Hello. It takes you back into within yourself and really introspection, which is sometimes we don't do enough. So it was a good experience.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed for those contributions. I'm grateful to you. So we'll now pause for a moment and have the musical performance by our friend who's going to play a piece on flute, please. Thank you. For me, the hope is about seeing young people like our friends here. That is what hope for me is. And we are here in London Borough of Brent, and we were recently the Borough of Culture, and isn't this amazing? I can listen to this all evening, and isn't this enough to make us all happy? Thank you very much. Thank you, and perhaps another round of applause to your young friends. So we've been waiting for our panel, and here we are. The moment has arrived, and I'm going to welcome Sister Philippa, and she's going to lead on this for us this evening. Philippa is an award-winning radio documentary maker and presenter, having worked for BBC for many years. She is now working for a national project, 100 Women of Spirit, which explores and celebrates the role of women and spirituality. And so wonderful to have you, Philippa, this evening with us. Philippa, while she's just getting the microphone ready, Philippa is currently an interfaith minister in Ledbury, and she's going to lead on this session for us with our panel guests, and she'll be introducing them individually. So thank you very much. Please welcome Sister Philippa. Please make your way to the chairs. If you make your way to the chairs for me, please.
Hi, Jeff. Why don't you come and sit here, Jeff?
Are you happy with me?
Yes, that's lovely.
Is there water in those glasses?
There's water in this bottle here.
Okay, good. I see some.
There's glasses of water there as well.
Thank you. No.
This feels a very special moment as these leaders of different faith communities are nodding and greeting each other. You can feel the arm of friendship extending between them, and it's a very lovely feeling. Great to be with you all here today. And it's lovely to step into this atmosphere of the inner space here in Wembley. I parked my car just behind and walked. My car was saying it was 29 degrees. It was really hot. Walking through the crowded streets, bustling with people seemingly from all corners of the world. Really hectic. As you can hear, it still is out there now. And then stepping into this beautiful space. And it was a lovely moment because the violinist was playing the violin down the corridor. Our lovely band members here were tuning up and playing. And I thought, wow, we've got a vision of the future here already. I'm already feeling hope. I'm already feeling healing from the music. And I'm certainly already feeling happiness. So whatever the family here in Wembley are doing, we just need to scale it up to include the whole world. Because you're definitely onto something here. It's a great atmosphere when you step in. So my name is Philippa, and as was said, I am also ordained as an interfaith minister, so it's a subject that lies very close to my heart. And it's quite an achievement to have gathered these representatives of different faith communities here for our discussion. And we are talking about a vision of the future. It's a discussion that is of paramount importance in these critical times that we are living through. So I'm really interested to hear where we can get to in the time that we have allocated to us. Let me introduce everyone as we go down the line. Let's begin with Rabbi Jeff Berger, who's sat with me here. Originally from Rabbi here, originally from New York City. He moved to the United Kingdom in the year 2000. He holds a university degree in business administration and in Asian studies. I always think it's quite nice to hear the route that people have taken to do the job that they do, especially if you're a younger person. It can be quite inspiring. After a career in commerce spanning 3 continents, he was ordained in 2009 in London, and he currently serves as the rabbi of the Wembley Sephardi Synagogue. And you have really, as your goal for 2022, to continue building friendships and trust across the different faiths. So, Rabbi Jeff, can you just say for us in a few words why it is that you feel so inspired by this vision of working across the different faith communities?
Thank you so much, Philippa, for this opportunity, and also to the Inner Space community for being here. I think that perhaps my colleagues would all agree that we have a tradition that human beings were created in the image of the divine. And for a long time, I found that image amongst the people who are of my own faith. And when you see someone and you develop that appreciation of the divine spark that exists within them, it gives you a sense of joy and love. But if one limits oneself only to that manifestation of the divine presence, then I believe that we're missing out on so much more. And one of the things that attracted me to the Brahma Kumari community, we were involved in a program which was called Climate Change and My Religion. And I was invited to come and participate in some of the meditations. And the spirituality that I've experienced has been remarkable. And it's helped me to see a wider picture of what God might be.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. Let's move down the line now to the Right Reverend John Sherrington. Now, John, you read mathematics at Cambridge University, for which huge respect. You then worked in management consultancy, so something very different, but had a life change, and you were ordained as a priest in 1987. And then in 2011, you were ordained as an auxiliary bishop of Westminster and a titular bishop of Cllr, which I'm not quite sure what that means. Is that somewhere in Tunisia?
It is.
Does it mean you get to have holidays in Tunisia?
No, in fact, Philippa, it's every bishop should have a piece of land, a see, but as an auxiliary bishop, the bishop is Cardinal Vincent Nichols, so he is the bishop. So they give us names of sees that are now defunct. But what it does mean, since it was part of the Metropolitan of Carthage in ancient times, that I do feel a great affinity with those people suffering in those countries. Because there's some link, spiritual link with Cllr, very different situation now, but of course we know of much suffering in all of those countries of North Africa. So it gives me an affinity with those people for whom I can pray.
That's lovely. It's a bit like a sort of town twinning. You have a special relationship with that little corner. Now, of course, you're sat here in a way representing the Roman Catholic Church, which is one of the huge forces in the world today. Just in a few words, to what extent do you feel that the church and that faith communities in general have a role to play in creating this vision of the future that we're going to be talking about?
Well, thanks firstly to say it's wonderful to be here. I'm delighted to be here. And as Rabbi Jeff said, understanding that we all have a deep foundation in the creation by the divine of men and women. And I think there of that vision that we share in the vision of Noah and the covenant that God made with humanity after the flood, that image of the rainbow, an image of peace, restoration, and that humanity must live together. So what might we contribute as churches? First of all, to recognize our roots with Judaism, with Islam, in Abraham, a people that have common roots, with others that we share that understanding of created by the divine. But as Christians, we're always concerned not only with our relationship with Jesus Christ and his promises, but also concerned to build a better world. So the value of solidarity is really important for us, that to make a commitment to every man and every woman so that they can flourish in the best possible way. And I think I can see wonderful examples in the Holy Father, Pope Francis, in the way that he has reached out to people of all faiths and none to say we're engaged in a common task. And that we can see some of that going right back to St. Francis of Assisi, and also that we all together must look after this gift of God's creation, which is threatened. And so many of our brothers and sisters are threatened by rising sea levels or agricultural land becoming desert in the south of the Sahara. So we can only tackle that together. And I see a place for all faith communities.
Well, we'll talk more about that in just a moment, but you've raised some very interesting points that I hope we'll have time to come back to. Sister Jayanti, in the middle here, I don't think probably needs any introduction to anyone here. We all know her, of course, as a great friend, a spiritual mentor, and a guide to anyone on the path of the Brahma Kumaris Raja Yoga meditation. She is now the additional administrative head of the Brahma Kumaris, which sadly takes her over to India a little more than we would perhaps like. But she still has a role here as director of Europe and the Middle East. And of course, Sister Jayanti, you have this role of representing, on the one hand, the organization, but there is this twin flame of having a passion for working alongside other faith traditions. And you've done so much work in this over the last 50 years. How do you see your role as, in the one hand, representing a faith tradition, but on the other hand, reaching out and walking part of your journey alongside brothers and sisters of other faiths?
I'd like to share a greeting of peace, Om Shanti, with all my brothers and sisters here tonight. And yes, it's an interesting journey, because I think you have to be very deeply rooted in faith, in your own belief, that then allows you to have a heart that's big enough to be able to embrace people of all other traditions also. And so I came across the Brahma Kumaris at a very early age, and so I grew up in that atmosphere, but then I made a conscious decision to follow that particular path. And it was after traveling on my journey of Raj Yoga that in the 70s, I understood that there is something called interfaith. And since then, it's been a very beautiful journey to have many friends and to see that we actually share the same core values. And I wouldn't have been able to say this before making friends with people of other backgrounds. And in recent times, what has been very lovely has been to see how people of so many different traditions have been able to come together as one, to say that all of us together as one human family have to tackle the crises, in particular of climate change. I've been involved with that since 2009 in a very deep way. And I see how people of all traditions really value nature, value the world, value human life. And so it's only through working together that we can actually make a difference and bring about a change in people's consciousness and how they behave in terms of their relationship with the world out there.
We'll come back to the environment in a moment for sure. But our final guest, Imam Monawar Hussain. Now, you have a degree in theology from Oxford University, so we're flying both flags here tonight. You also have an MA in Abrahamic religions from London University. You're the founder of the Oxford Foundation, which promotes religious and racial harmony. You also helped to devise an education programme for young people to tackle violent extremism. You're the chaplain at Eton College and also the Oxford University Hospitals Trust. And you describe your life work as bringing together people from all the communities and faith communities that are found in Oxfordshire. You obviously have a huge heart that has room for absolutely everyone. What's the driving force behind the work that you're doing?
Yeah, thank you, Philippa. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Peace be upon you all. Thank you very much indeed for having me, Ketan. It's a real pleasure to be here. And by the way, when I was parking up, a very kind gentleman came and offered me 20 pence, because all I needed was 20 pence to park up my car. And so a complete stranger who came. And so there's so much kindness out there and so much love. But really what motivates me is that the center, the very purpose of our creation was love. You know, we have a tradition that says that God loved to be known, so he created creation. And as our sister here said, we're one family. You know, what we create when we come together, that rich diversity of faiths and cultures or people of no faith, but the human beings coming together, what we create is something very beautiful. And so, you know, I work in a hospital. I've just come from Oxford University Hospitals, dealing with some really difficult cases. There is enough suffering in the world without us having human beings turning up on themselves. And so what motivates me really is that I love bringing people together. And so it's not just Oxfordshire. The last big event I held was in the Cloth Workers Hall in the City of London. We had about 250 people. And, you know, the language of music. You know, we had music from different faith traditions. It touches the heart. It's a universal language. And so I try and create safe spaces in which people of diverse backgrounds can come together, talk to each other, but enjoy the beauty that exists in all different cultures and faiths and in the human family. And I think we're stronger when we work together. And with my sort of hospital hat on, we've had a terrible time, as the Deputy Lieutenant mentioned, with the pandemic. It's been awful. There's been a lot of grief and suffering and so on. But isn't it amazing how the human family, the talent and the skill and the expertise we have, came together to develop these vaccines so that we can come together safely. And that saved so many millions of lives. So when we come together, we mentioned the climate crisis. There is nothing on the face of this earth that we can't solve and that we don't have a solution for when we as human beings come together and try and address it.
Of course, Oxford played its part in that journey spectacularly. For many people, when they look at the world and the history of conflict, the finger of blame often points towards religion. And I wonder how we move forwards from the legacy that we carry from history to a vision of togetherness that is really meaningful. And if I could come to you, Sister Jayanti, first, you once shared with me a beautiful vision that you have of is it a bicycle wheel? Where the more you go into the inner path of your faith tradition, actually the closer you feel to people of other faiths. Can you share with us that vision?
Thank you. Yes, I remember that image very well because it's something that's really been very useful for me. And this was way back in the 90s, the early 90s, that I heard this. And it was this image of a bicycle wheel. And when I stand here and you stand here, diametrically opposite, then we look across at each other and we're very different. Maybe different color of skin, different language, different food, different scriptures, different rituals, different, everything's different. And so how are we going to come together in any way? But if you go on an inner journey within your own tradition, and I do the same within my own tradition, we meet at the center point. And at that center point, there are two things that hold us together. The mystical experience of the divine, and I think everyone who's here would share something very similar. And I believe that that is the fact that we all share that same mystical spiritual experience. And secondly, we share the same core values. And so at the heart of the human family, within its amazing, beautiful diversity, there's also this seed of coming together, one family.
Rabbi Jeff, you're nodding there. Is that a sentiment that you would really echo?
Yes, absolutely. It's a little bit difficult or different in terms of how we remain faithful to our own tradition, because our own traditions are diverse and different. And I often say to people that when I studied for ordination, the course lasted for 2,000 hours of study, within which 20 hours were dedicated to other traditions. The remainder was related to all of the theology and theodicy of the Jewish faith. So we do have an overcoming to make. And I think Sister Jayanti put it beautifully, that when we focus on our own tradition and we feel confident in our own faith, then we have that sense of magnanimity, that sense of openness that we can welcome in someone who is different from us and not be threatened by the fact that they believe in something else. I also often have to tell my colleagues that it starts from a position of being non-judgmental, the idea of creating a safe space, and also recognizing that we have our own authenticity and integrity that we want to remain true to, and somehow or another work on those things that all of us can agree are essential. So, for example, the climate change, or, for example, rescuing people during the pandemic by generously donating our time in food banks and clothing drives and homeless shelters. There are a lot of things that I think we learned during the pandemic, and one of them to me is that no single faith alone could solve the problem, nor was any single faith alone immune from the disease. And I think that was a remarkable step forward that we learned from the pandemic. And could I have one more moment? So in the Jewish tradition, we read from the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, every week in synagogue. And we have a cycle that is intended to complete annually. So we divide it into small portions. And we happen to be in the period where we're looking at the book of Numbers. And the book of Numbers is about encampments and the travels of the Israelites through the desert for 40 years. And remarkably, where we would expect brevity, it would be sufficient to say, and the people traveled by the word of God, and they arrived safely. Instead, we have this enormous list of 42 different locations that they stayed in, some for a month, some for 10 days, some for a day or two. And when the rabbis queried what was the purpose of putting that description, almost a tedious description to some extent, in the scriptures, one of the most interesting answers that came back was that in each one of those places, there was a lesson that we had to learn. We are all individually and also in our own faiths on a journey. And at each step along the way, there are lessons that we have to learn. And I think that the pandemic has showed us that the convergence of humanity working together is perhaps the step that we're all heading to now for the future.
Absolutely. If one were to try and find a silver lining, it would perhaps be this recognition of our joint humanity, that we are equally going through these huge events, and the environmental debate is another example that pulls us together with a common vision. To what extent do each of you feel, though, that the voice of faith, the voice of spirit, has been heard against the many voices that are talking about a way forwards and the solutions to find a better future? Have we been hearing your voices?
I think I would want to first acknowledge that when you look at Christian history, it's full of fracture and division and land grabs or power, and it's not only with people of other faith, but even amongst ourselves. And perhaps recognizing, therefore, first of all, that understanding that we are fallen, we're not perfect, and we have to overcome that personally and collectively. And that's a process of conversion. And that's where I think we'd all speak of that need for prayer, and that gift that comes from prayer to go beyond ourselves. And as the Imam said, we're created to love. That's how we were made. So I suppose I want to recognize that dark history with its shadows, but we can also see prophetic figures in our history. So St. Francis of Assisi, who was trying to find a peace at the time of the Crusades, or more recently, Dorothy Day on the streets of New York in the Catholic worker movement, looking after those who, a laywoman, looking after those who had no food, who had nowhere to rest their heads. How are our voices? I think we have to do a lot of hard work to convince people we can work together. The Catholic Church took a new direction in the 1960s with the Second Vatican Council. We need to keep telling people we did that, and our dialogue with Jewish people and people of Islam. But I think it's our practical projects that speak most of all. So in Brent, we have about 11 schools. Newman Catholic College in Halsden welcomes Syrian refugees who couldn't speak a word of English, and we were generously assisted by Brent Council, and now they have excelled. So we provided a home, and we began to learn about their dietary regulations, their prayer, their families. So we met, and I think that it's through our meeting that we can witness to what we're doing, because whilst we can communicate our theologies or our history, what people want to look at is witness, and they learn more from witness than they do from words.
It's seeing practical action. Sister Jayanti, you've attended the climate change conferences for many years now, and within that conference there is a growing contingent of representatives from the different faith communities. How have you seen that grow and evolve, and the people of faith begin to find their voice, their common voice?
I remember when we first started attending these events, people who were activists in the environmental movement were quite surprised to find us there, and they couldn't see the link between consciousness and climate. And maybe even here there might be a question: what is the connection of consciousness and climate? And what it is that, as is my consciousness, so then my behavior, my lifestyle, and if my consciousness is materialistic, then of course my behavior and lifestyle is very much part of the consumer society, and I'm part of that consumerism. And I'm just simply taking from nature without care or concern about the violence we're inflicting on nature and whatever is going on, because we think that shopping, buying, accumulating is going to bring happiness, which is absolutely further from the truth than you can imagine. And when you change your consciousness and you become spiritually aware, then you can have a simpler lifestyle. You don't want to impose violence on nature or animals. And because of this, then, of course, your carbon footprint reduces greatly. And I don't need to explain it any further. You see the connection. So it was a new aspect that was being brought in. But I remember a very specific change happened in 2015. And that was in Paris, just before the Paris Agreement. And Christiana Figueres, who had been the Executive Secretary General for UNFCCC, what she said was that she could see this vision of hope through the rainbow and that image of the rainbow. And she was very encouraging of people of faith to come together as a community. And in Paris, there was a disaster that had happened just prior to the conference. But people of faith came together so beautifully, so powerfully. And it was at that time that the activists began to acknowledge the need for faith communities to be present in this particular way. And they could see that we were bringing a message of hope, and where people were feeling pretty hopeless about the situation. But spirituality, religion brought in a message of hope through their faith. But also they could see that many religions were coming together with the same voice, that there has to be respect for humanity, there has to be respect for nature itself. And I think that the other aspect was that they could also see that faith traditions had a global grassroots outreach. And if they wanted people really to understand the message of how to deal with the environment and how to bring about change, you had to go through the faith leaders. And so I think that that movement has been growing and the voice has been getting louder and louder, to the point where in Glasgow, for example, the World Wildlife Fund, which has had very little to do with religion or tradition in that way, they actually invited faith leaders to share a platform that they created. And it was quite interesting to see how an organization that had been totally focused on the external aspect of nature was now asking us to join forces with them. So there has been a very dramatic change in the way in which others see us and our involvement within this particular subject.
And has it been an opportunity for new relationships to be forged and better understanding to be reached?
Absolutely. Many, many friends now who I would say are really good friends, and not just within one country, but I'm thinking of a man called Bishop Huggins from Australia, and he's the Episcopal bishop there. And he's just become an amazing, warm friend. And you could call him up at any time and say, Philip, what do you think about this? And he'll be there to support and give his good counsel.
You lay out a very potent vision in a way that these faith communities that we're representing some of here this evening have such a reach across the globe. You can't help feeling if only they could just get together and find one message and disseminate that message amongst their followers, we could really begin to gather some momentum for this appetite that is out there for change. And yet I don't see that happening. How do we bring that about?
I think it is happening.
Me too.
Okay, so tell us the ways in which that is happening.
On a local scale, in the United Kingdom, an organization called Eco Church was founded several years ago. That organization then helped inspire another organization called Eco Synagogue, and another one that has developed called Eco Mosque. And so I think that there are a lot of local connections that are being made, perhaps because, if we want to be perhaps a little bit politically incorrect, institutionalized religion is about as difficult to change course as it is to get a battleship to move from one direction to the other. But when you start at the grassroots level, and that percolates up, eventually I think that we will see the type of messaging that you're talking about, although I do believe that in the G20 Interfaith Conference this past year, there was a lot of messaging that was put together, and it was focused around 2 or 3 main subjects, including, for example, protecting houses of worship from vandalism and assault. Right? Those messages were then passed on to the G20, and they were part of the discussion. So while you may not hear something, I don't know, global, with one single message, there are a lot of messages that are being shared and that are percolating up through.
And of course, those positive stories aren't necessarily being picked up by the media, and maybe that's why we're not aware of it as much as we should be. Imam, we have this conversation we've had about hope. The second part is healing. To what extent do you feel your work is about healing wounds that may exist? And if so, how do you go about doing that healing?
Just want to come back to this idea of, how do we respond to the climate crisis? I think the real issue is more fundamental. It's not just because what we have is we have religious traditions, and as Jeff has rightly said, they're very difficult to maneuver and kind of change. But so in Islam, we have the sense of orthodoxy, the outward, but then there is the inner core. So, for example, the Quran teaches us that everything, all creation, is busy in the dhikr of Allah Ta'ala, i.e. in the remembrance of God. We have to kind of retune ourselves so that we're able to hear the song of the creation. And until we do that, there will not be a transformation, because we will continue to treat the creation that we have around us as if it's there to serve us. Whereas, in fact, we're just simply custodians. So we have to take care, we have to love, and we have to create ways in terms of dealing with the rest of creation with love. So in terms of our teaching, we have to go to and dig deeper within our traditions and dig deeper to reach the spiritual vision of our traditions. Without the spiritual vision, there is no solution. And ultimately, we will all have to come back to that spiritual vision that lies within all our traditions. And that's where there is that universal unity and sense of oneness. How does one, you mentioned, sort of create that understanding between faiths? Is that what you're saying?
And heal the wounds.
Heal. I think we heal them through love. We heal them through forgiveness. And we heal them through this very beautiful concept that we have, that Muslims seem to have kind of, well, we have quite lost it, but over the last 200 years, there's been this idea of that we have to reform Islam. And that reformation, the result of that reformation has been more symbolism, more politicization, and we've lost the inner core. And that inner core is Sufism. That's the heart of the Islamic tradition, and we have to recover that. And at the heart of that tradition is Ihsan. Ihsan comes from the word husn, which is beauty, which is harmony. So we have to create harmony and beauty within ourselves, and then we create beauty and harmony in everything that we do around us. And part of that beauty and harmony are those valleys of compassion. those values of forgiveness. And that's where I think we create a better world, that we reach out into our own traditions, at the core of which is that beauty and that compassion and reconciliation. Because look what's happening in the world. You know, I know we're talking about climate crisis, but, you know, there is a real danger of an escalation in Ukraine that could lead to, you know, us going back into the Stone Ages. You know, this is a very serious time. And therefore, for people of faith, we have to raise voices of peace. We have to raise voices of compassion and love. That we're one human family. So if Ukrainians are being hurt, we feel hurt. If somebody in Africa is being hurt, we feel hurt because we're part of that one whole body. And so one piece, as the prophet, peace be upon him, said, if one piece, one part of that body aches, you must feel that pain and that ache. So it's actually having empathy with people, you know, listening to people. You know, I think recently we've begun with Ed Kessler from Cambridge and Lord Alderdice, who was involved in the Northern Ireland peace process. We've been going to Jerusalem and actually talking to people that we wouldn't normally meet in interfaith circles, people who might have a different point of view. So being able to listen to people we might disagree with. Because as long as the conversation is continuing, it means people ain't picking up the guns and doing violence. And that's really important too.
Beautiful. I wonder what each of you thinks about the role of the next generation of young people and the extent to which they see the voice of faith as actually being relevant to our discussion of the future. Because my observation is that their faith is in technology. Their communion is with this little device that is in their hand. They're you know, having constant communication with this, and there's no thought of having a communication with something above and beyond them. Do you find young people are engaged? Obviously, we know they're engaged in the environment debate, but are they seeing faith communities as having a relevance to them in their lives?
I think if I could begin, I think we need to ask the young people, but certainly my experience is that young people I've met are living faith values and understand it and developing a life of prayer within the family. I think central to this is the value you hand on to your children. Now, I could cite lots of examples of children who pray, and they talk to me about prayer. They'll light a candle, they'll remember granny or granddad, they pray for their pets, and at the end of the day, they would give thanks to God. So I think children are actually often naturally full of gratitude, and that's what we have to rediscover as adults, to be men and women of gratitude. So I'm hopeful about the children, and I think that children can then actually teach their parents, and that many of the teenagers I meet are actually anxious about this world of social media because of all the different messages it gives them. They're anxious because of the peer pressure they experience. So, you know, we try in our schools to give them safe spaces to talk and to begin to share what's wrong. But I have a lot of hope in this new generation. Those who are not part of faith communities, I think it's much harder to reach out to them. I don't have the answer to that. But as the Imam said, foundational, I think, to the Christian message is gratitude, the sheer gift of what we're given, and compassion, tender compassion.
Sister Jayanti, you work a lot with younger people. What would your perspective be?
What I've found is that young people growing up in an era when there's so much science and evidence is such a big thing, they have many, many questions. And if we are able to give them answers, or at least suggest answers to them, to the questions that they have, and I would say to them, well, you don't have to believe me. Try out for yourself. Try experimenting with this idea. Try experimenting this way or another way. And if you guide them in that way, showing them where they can find answers and how they can develop their own experience of the things that you've had. But when they begin to have that same experience or similar in that area, they will then come to their own understanding and a commitment of faith. But if you just simply preach at them, they'll run away. And so I think that answering their questions and also guiding them to experience is a very important part of that spiritual development.
Mm-hmm. Well, perhaps you're listening to this conversation as a young person, and it would be lovely to hear your voice and what you think of some of the issues we've been discussing today. I think there's a way of putting your messages online, if you're listening online, that can be fed through to us here. But we have obviously people in our audience here today. So please do raise your hand, and we have a roving mic if anyone would like to ask a question of our panelists. It's a rare opportunity to have leaders of these faith traditions.
Philippa,
Imam,
can I just add, in terms of young people,
yeah.
I often go into assemblies. And last week I was with a group of year 7s. And every time I just think, wow, their thinking is so profound. You know, the kind of questions they'll ask and the conversation that you'll have. So I think we need to give them respect, you know, actually listen to their voices, because they're seeing with a different eye. They're seeing with the eye of fitra, which is that natural disposition that we were all born with. And the other thing I'd say is that Eton, we're very fortunate. I think we have a vision of education that's really unique. And that's, you know, there's a Jewish tutor, there's myself as a Muslim tutor, we have a Buddhist tutor, we have a Hindu tutor, we have a humanist tutor, and we're also looking at appointing a Sikh tutor. And I think if more and more schools had people of these faith traditions who created a shared space in which young people could engage in conversation, I think we'd be better for it.
I mean, absolutely. Unfortunately, the reality is that in most schools, the time given over to religious studies is getting less and less.
It is, yeah.
And
absolutely.
It's almost a lip service, shockingly so.
And this is why people are trying to find all sorts of solutions elsewhere. We will have to come back to the spiritual. Without that, there is no solution to our problems.
Well, that's a very powerful statement to come out of today's conversation. I think we do have a question.
Yes, hello.
Over here. Thank you.
Thank you so much for allowing me to ask this question. Now, so when I grew up as a kid, I didn't, my parents didn't tell me, I mean, I was not given any, go to the, come with me and I'll buy you a chocolate, or come with me and, you will get this, so come with me to the temple and I will get you this. Well, nowadays we see a lot of, people being involved in this, saying that, how do we create more activities which can involve more kids? So like a very common example, they say, well, let's keep a sporting activity in a faith center so that we can get them to come and pray and we can involve them. My question to you all is, I mean, firstly, is this the right thing to do? Second, when we grew up, we didn't have all these things. So I really want to, possibly reflect on what my parents did, which did bring me into faith and belief, where I was not given any, there was no chocolate given to me, or there was nothing, there was no bribe, I would say. So firstly, do you agree with this? And secondly, what is your answer to this question?
Perhaps we can get Bishop to answer that, and a quick answer would be appreciated, so we can take many more questions. Please, Bishop.
I think it's good to hand on values, and then children will make their own decisions. I think we need to help them in that process. I think that activities with proper safeguarding can be really helpful for them. That's what we've learned the need for proper safeguarding and adult volunteers. And many adults find it difficult to volunteer today for many different reasons, but that's where generosity comes in, and I think that's good for them.
Yes.
May I just
Yes, Rabbi, yes.
add on to that, I think it's very important to show young people that religion is not separate from the rest of life, that religion and life are combined together, they are organic. I was always fascinated. There's a wonderful temple, a Hindu temple in Neasden, and they built a social hall that is so large that they can do cricket practice inside the building. And every time I've been there, I've seen a group of young people practicing. So I think that it's very important for us to demystify and also perhaps take away a little bit of the awe and the fear. I remember as a child, if I was brought in to meet a rabbi, there was that sense of trembling. You know, what might go wrong, or what terrible thing could happen. Now that I'm a rabbi, I try to, you know, put people at ease. And so I think we just have to make it real and give young people a chance, because it works. You know, bribery is a wonderful thing for small children, but they tire of it when they get older.
I'm feeling left out. I was never offered chocolate.
I have some in my car.
I was obviously praying in the wrong church. Imam, were you going to come back on that as well?
I was just going to say there's a yearning for community. And I remember during Ramadan, you know, in the final 10 days, there's a retreat in the mosque. And so I would take my 8-year-old daughter to go and take some food, you know. And she just wanted to just stay there. And she was really connected. And I think it's making spaces welcome for our children, you know, and you know, not being scary. Because sometimes when children go, they're going to make a bit of noise. And there's always some elders who get really angry with children making a bit of noise, you know. But show them a bit of compassion and love and just let them be.
I certainly think it's true that some faith communities are better at introducing their ideas of faith to the next generation than others. Certainly, you know, the Asian communities seem to be fantastic at it. The Christian communities, I think it's possibly slipping a bit for most people. Did we have another question from just over here? Thank you. But perhaps this would be an idea to take children to different places of worship for them to experience
what a great
at a young age.
Yes, we're already doing.
I was invited to Broadway School in Perry-Barr, so they'd seen my work, and so that's what we did.
Yeah.
And they'd always gone past the mandir, but never gone inside. And so that's what we did. We visited places of worship. You're absolutely right.
Because if you create an understanding at a young age and friendships at a young age,
absolutely,
you're not going to see any differences.
Yeah.
We run a multi-faith activity residential overnight summer camp in the summer for a week in our locality, in our local town, for children of all faiths and backgrounds, or none. And we planned it by having a trustee from each of the different faith communities on the board, and someone who they would recognize from their community as a volunteer on the campsite. And we went through all of these scenarios about what happens if this happens, and if there's bullying, and if someone says something that's rude. And the children showed up, and they started to play together, and they didn't stop for 5 days.
Yeah. Beautiful. Absolutely lovely. Can we have our next question, please?
First of all, thank you so much for everything you do. I know this is a very tedious and slow work sometimes. You have been there through these years, so I really appreciate that, from creating the foundation for what we need right now. I'm not that young, I'm 37, but I work with a lot of people as a volunteer in my day-to-day as an activist, and I can see that there is a growing emergency about time sensitivity, is that the change we need right now doesn't have hundreds of years or 200 of years, but needs to happen in a very short scale of time. So what I'm concerned about is how is that change going to be made? And a lot of what you said, I really connect to, that it has to come from a spiritual level. So what I would like to ask all of you is to share your thoughts on how spirituality can connect with the front line, especially when I'm talking about children, young people, and not so young people who decide to sacrifice their own lives or own future, their careers, especially by disrupting the system, civil disobedience. Do you see that there is a link, and can activists and different faiths point in the same direction and meet somewhere in the middle?
Great question. Who'd like to go first?
Let me try. I think that it's very important that faith traditions and activism does come together. And what spirituality can give to the activists is, again, an enthusiasm and a vision of hope, but also perhaps bring a calming influence so that there's the aspect of non-violence that can come in. Because whatever is the path that I follow is going to lead to my destination. I can't follow the path of violence and hope to have a world of peace. It has to be non-violence that I follow, then peace is going to be the destination. And so I think that's what spirituality can bring to activism. And I think that, yes, activists with their creativity and also their passion can also inspire people who are on a spiritual journey. So I see value in coming together in that way.
And so what is the added value that you get from having a spiritual connection? Why should people be concerned about that?
I think spirituality gives you a sense of confidence. And I'm reminded of all shall be well and all manner of things shall be well. It's all going to be all right at the end. And that's where I think that hope comes in, that trust, you know, and that comes through spiritual growth. And then, you know, all sorts of waves will come and storms come, but they can't put out your light, and because that's an inner light. And that's what we have to work towards. And so, yeah, it gives you great hope, but, you know, I think it was, that thought came, you know, all shall be well in all manner of
That's Julian of Norwich.
That's right. Wonderful, wonderful, beautiful. And we have all of those quotes within our traditions. But for me personally, it's that inner confidence. It's all going to be okay. We do have to work for it and strive for it.
How do you feel hearing that, someone of faith telling you it's all going to be okay? From their perspective, obviously the Imam is sure of what he's saying. Are you convinced when you hear that?
I personally believe in that. Otherwise I couldn't do what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I couldn't do what I do if I didn't have that faith that it's going to be okay. I think that element of hope is really important. But I would also add that the element of active hope is also very, very important, that it's acted upon, and that actually gives the strength to feel it's worth. By the way, I'm wearing this armband that says non-violence.
Yeah.
Very good.
You're far stronger when it's non-violent.
I've been very influenced by Martin Luther King and his writing, and that non-violence coming from a place of peace, not anger. And I think that that's what a spirituality can give, to come from peace and actually have to trust that God's time and human time are different. Now, step by step, working away at it with hope. But I think spirituality means we come at this with peace, and therefore it has to be non-violent. But never underestimate what that can achieve.
Can I suggest, has anyone heard of Ahmed Bamba? Ahmed Bamba.
No.
So he was around 100 years before Martin Luther King and Gandhiji in Senegal. And his campaign was peace. You know, he campaigned against colonial occupation through peace. And he won. And we have all of those examples in our traditions. And I think it's really important to share them, because often they're all kind of suppressed under this politicization that's going on.
And we do sometimes forget that non-violence is an option, you know, because
Absolutely.
so often we hear the opposite. Last question before we break for our meditation. Thank you.
I'll try and be very quick as well. So it's a thought that I want to know from your end. My name is Anish. I work with Brent Health Matters program.
Health matters.
Health matters, and it's working with children and young people is my remit. So I do get all your thoughts that you're coming from, and when you said that in Eton there is a privileged option where you have different faith forums, they come in and they address the kids, but we work with kids with very underprivileged background, the school and the environment that they are in, they don't have those facilities where they would be integrated in a lot of facilities that someone from a Cambridge or an Oxford background would have it. But irrespective of what the background the kids come from, they are very vocal. This generation is very vocal in demanding the change, in demanding what they want for themselves. I think the question goes to the key decision makers, how we get them involved in the whole decision-making process for their future. But because most of the times the decisions are taken without them being involved. And when they're not involved in their own future, that's time the frustration comes out. The pathway which is taken is either violence or either disengagement. And then the burden of managing that comes to a different setting environment. So it comes out from faith group or the political background, and it comes from the health perspective, I believe. And we do suffer, or we do have the whole pressure of managing those expectations from a younger kid. So it's just that how much do you guys get the kids involved in the whole decision-making process of designing their future?
If I can throw in another question, a kind of a concluding comment from each of you. The question here is how do we get the kids involved in creating a vision of their own future? And maybe I could just add to that, what one thing would you offer as a way of building this vision of hope, healing and happiness for the future of our planet?
Can I add something to it?
Yeah. Add one last thing.
Very short. I hear you all saying that we all are one family and our core values are the same. And they all are good. But my question to you is, why this message is not going to the whole world? Why there is so much conflict in the name of religion? I think something is missing there. I think we are just saying we are the best. And so what we should be teaching to our children, to new generation, that you can believe in whatever faith you believe, but we should respect all. Because we are, as far as the religion goes, 99% people are born into it. It's very unlikely that they change. So it is given to us. So, and the children grow in that religion, believing what they are being brought up into. It's not their fault or anything. Why people think this message doesn't go to the public, that we should respect all, we are equal, regardless of our religion.
Thank you for your question. And maybe events like this evening help put that message out there, that we are all talking together, that we are building towards a vision of the future based on the best of all our faith traditions. So what message do we have for children, for young people, for humanity, for a way to make this vision become a reality? Should we begin with you, Rabbi Jeff?
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Just short.
I'll try to be very short. First of all, for the question that was asked about young people in schools that don't necessarily have access, there's an organization which is called the Faith and Belief Forum. They set up a program of volunteers who go into schools, if you request, and they will present from their own faith tradition. And so you can have a panel of 3 or 4 different people, and one will represent either whatever religious community that is not being represented in your school. I would strongly recommend you contact them. They've also set up a program called Parliamentors, where they match young people with parliamentarians.
Wow.
And that gives young people an opportunity to start learning about how to affect policy change in the country. So I think that there is a lot that is going on. In terms of a vision for the future, I guess I'll just conclude with one brief thought. We all consider ourselves people of faith. In the Hebrew, the word faith is emunah. It comes from a word which means uman, or craftsperson. Faith is not something that just happens to us. It's something that we have to develop like a skill, like a silversmith, or like a potter. And the more we develop our faith, the more we realize that a lot of what happens to us is a test, right? You can face a crisis and see it as an opportunity or as a disaster. And I think many people have already pointed out that while COVID-19 was horrible in terms of its impact on the planet, there are a lot of unintended benefits that we've appreciated, we've come to realize. So I think realizing that being tested is a blessing, and realizing that faith is something that we need to develop as a skill. Those are two important things that I
Maybe all these things will make us stronger in the end. Bishop Andrew, what would your message be?
I think just responding to the lady there, I think every religion has a story of a fall. And therefore, using the Jewish philosopher, how we understand the other person as a thou, I and thou, we can easily reduce them to it because of the fall. So it's I and thou, and building that relationship. And that's going to mean sacrifice on my part. I have to sacrifice something to always respect the other. And therefore we have to be ready to sacrifice. And I think for your question, I was encouraged to hear what Rabbi said about children meeting politicians. I think I'd ask, well, how do children meet their local councillors? How do they meet their politicians? Do they go and listen to them? We can provide fora, but actually they have to go and then listen, and maybe they get a different perspective. So I think that would be really innovative, to find some forum for children to talk to their counsellors. So for adults, it happens through groups like Citizens. But actually, how does that happen?
We've had some very creative suggestions and solutions, which has given us a lot to think about. Sister Jayanti, why should faith matter? What would your message be to inspire the next generation?
I think not just for the next generation, but for every person on the planet. I think the important message is that there's goodness within every human being. And if we give a little bit of time to ourselves for silence, for reflection, for contemplation, then we're able to get in touch with that goodness that lies within. And we find that peace and truth and love within ourselves. And I think this is the message that I would want everybody to understand and experiment with and discover the truth of this for themselves. And that would, when I can love myself, then I can love my neighbor also. But if I don't know how to love myself, I'm never going to be able to love my neighbor. And so I think that this essential message of spirituality is go inside and find that goodness.
Beautiful message. Thank you so much. Imam, you have the last word.
I think just to say that there is a propensity in human beings for evil and violence, and religion and spirituality comes to rein that in, to channel that energy into goodness, into love, and into peace. And what we have recently is that religion has become a tool for people who want power, who want to dominate others, and who want to strip them of their humanity. What they don't realize is when we strip the other of their humanity, we strip our own humanity. The other thing I've discovered, I just finished my year as High Sheriff of Oxfordshire in March, and my daughters were great in introducing me to social media. And I thought, wow, my tweets have been seen over 500,000 times. My daughters have produced short, sharp videos. I mean, one of them actually within hours was had been seen 10,000 times. So I would say to young people that the social media is a way of empowering you and empowering your message to reach phenomenal amount of humanity. That we've never had before.
Beautiful.
There is no way I would have been able to reach that kind of audience with regular, normal newspapers. But Twitter and social media has been an amazing tool for good. older people can also use it in a destructive way.
So there's the younger generation teaching you, which
Yeah,
is a nice two-way flow of ideas and inspiration. So we have a message, and we have the medium, the way with which to broadcast that message. We've heard so many beautiful ideas. I wish we could have had more time, but we have to leave it there for now. But we're going to move now into our sequence where you can take into yourself some of these truths that you have heard this evening and just turn them over in your mind. And as you do so, we're going to listen to a beautiful violin playing by Brother Jill. And Sister Joy is here to share her thoughts with us as well.
Om Shanti. Take a few moments to turn your thoughts within. Sit at ease. And allow yourself to feel that inner stability, that inner peace and harmony that's been generated here this evening. And just notice, just witness how this feeling of contentment and ease, of peace, has been echoed in your life. This kind of atmosphere is such a strong foundation. This peace, this contentment, this ease is harmony. It is our essence. And within it, there is love. For ourselves, from the divine. It is woven in the care. As we witness this for ourselves, as we live it for ourselves, we can reach out. It automatically reaches out to those we meet in our day-to-day life. We pass it forward. And that gratitude for our skills, for this experience, this knowing that every soul on the planet has this capacity. Everyone. And if they're not visibly showing it, then you have compassion that they can return to it. Staying strong in my own foundation of peace, and witness that. Let my vibration reach out in my thoughts and my feelings and my attitude, and I hold that hopeful vision and gratitude that everyone will experience this too. Om Shanti.
So we're coming to the end of our program. So my role here is to say thanks. Many of you know me. My name is Daksha, and I coordinate the activities of Inner Space, Wembley, with a very active and useful and happy and positive team. So you've met many of them here. So I just wanted to thank all of the panelists, especially, and our facilitators, Philippa, Councillor Ketan, Kanan, and all of you who are able to be here. We know there's been partial strikes today. Very kind of, I don't know what to say, the IT team looked into where they've been watching us from. So some of them have been watching us from Philippines, which is like 2 a.m. maybe in the morning for them. So as you can see how popular and this program has been. And I was very, deeply touched with everything that was shared and the questions that were asked and the wonderful performances by our artists. I had met them a few months ago, and the amount of hours they said they actually give in rehearsing daily, I was just so touched. So Raquel, Shivani, Tejal, Jill, and also beautiful meditation by Sister Joy. So thanks to all and all those in the background who has made lovely food for you. So it's not the end. You're going to get a little sweet and a positive card, with a card with the positive thoughts. But there's also food around the corner. So you can go and get it after the event and then come back and have your dinner here. So all that has worked hard in the background to make this happen. And actually, for some of you may know that we actually plan to have this event in January, but just to get diaries matched in terms of panelists wasn't possible until now. But what a beautiful time for us to be here together. So just to flag up some of the things that we do here and at the Brahma Kumaris. So we offer various courses in meditation, which is our prime course, and also in positive thinking, overcoming anger. We also have a beautiful quiet room. It's not very quiet, but it is quiet room. Not quiet in terms of the tremors that we often have to go through, that we don't notice after being here for. And I should have, we forget to often inform people who are visiting for the first time that that's what's happening. Yes, so we have a quiet room which is open for you all to visit anytime when Inner Space is open. And there was this little leaflet left on your chair, so do pick it up. Every Tuesday evening we have talks, and some of them actually came here yesterday thinking it was on a Tuesday, this event. So next one is Be Light and Achieve New Heights by Sister Gemini, and that's going to be 6:45 to 7:45. And also we have a very beautiful bookshop downstairs, so please go and visit our bookshop after you have had something to eat. And we're really also pleased that we were able to hold this event in month of June to honor the Queen and to have you with us, especially. Was very, very beautiful. So it's just the right time. It didn't happen in January, but there was a reason that it had to happen in this month. And if I've forgotten to mention anybody's names, from our hearts, we want to thank everybody, and especially many of the brothers and sisters who have come from our main branch in Woolston, Global Cooperation House, and some of them have been working whole day today. So yes, there's beautiful food waiting for you. But before that, if I could ask a panelist to take their seat and just ask Sister Jayanti to stay behind. We're going to ask you to come through the center aisle here to take a little sweet and savory. Savory has come from India. It's all labeled, so if you're allergic, you can read the labels. And then go for the food dinner in that room. Just take the dinner and you can come and sit here because there's not enough room for everyone there. Yeah, and we hope to see you all very soon again. Please feel free to stay behind, mingle with people, and share more, and more things will come up in terms of partnership and collaborations. Thank you. Receive the token of thanks for their wonderful sharings. And then everyone else can follow them.
Thank